Hello, and welcome to Planning Effectively with Journeys. We've already gotten started by doing an introductory activity, so now we're going to jump into the meat of the program for today. So let's look at the pieces of the puzzle of teaching and thinking about the Journeys curriculum. This is just a self-reflection to think about. If you want to talk about it at your table with others, you can do that. But what is the purpose of whole group instruction, small group instruction, and independent instruction or independent practice? Those are the three main parts of the Journeys program, because the Journeys program offers materials and resources and activities to use in all three of these settings. And all three of these settings are very important. So just think about that. We're going to go ahead and take a few minutes to think and reflect at your table, and then we're going to share out a few things that you thought about when you're done. So go ahead and get started. We'll take 4 minutes. Okay. Would anyone like to share what you came up with? Great. Thanks for sharing. We're going to move on and talk about what are the characteristics of an effective plan. And there are a few things. We have an article. You should have an article in your participant guide. And in a minute, you're going to take some time to read that and do a group activity. But in summary, the characteristics of an effective plan are these that you see here. And all of these are things that you know as a teacher. I'm sure that you are implementing these in all the plans you have. You may not think of them in these actual words, but I think it's just something general knowledge that professional teachers know. That an effective plan includes one that articulates learning outcomes, activates prior knowledge, provides ongoing feedback to the teacher and the student, acquires knowledge, the student is acquiring knowledge, provides practice, and extends and applies the curriculum that they are practicing or learning about. So once we've reflected on what the purpose of those are, what are those main characteristics of planning effectively, now I want you to think about a recent Journeys plan lesson that you did. And how did you plan for those three pieces, whole group, small group, and independent practice? What components did your lesson include? Go ahead and discuss this with someone near you, or you can take a minute if you prefer to work individually and just write down the answer. There's a place in your participant guide on page 5 where you can answer this question. So we'll go ahead and take about 5 minutes to reflect on this. Okay. All right, great. Does anyone want to share out what you talked about and what your plan looked like? Thanks for sharing. It's nice to be able to sometimes get together and just share what our thinking process is, what are some things you do in your classroom, because we don't always get that time as teachers. And sometimes that's enough to just get our creative juices going on how we want to use the program in our classrooms. Paired with this time together, having the time to have professional in-service, again, talking to each other and going through the Journeys, dissecting the Journeys program and how the pieces that you have are already part of an effective lesson plan. But it's all about, deciding which of these resources, it's such a large program, you know that. Which of these resources are best in your classroom? Which are best to use in a whole group setting? What resources and Journeys are best in a small group setting? And then what are best to use for individual practice for students? So one of the first activities we're going to do that will allow you to kind of dissect a plan and think about the purposes of all of the pieces that are included in the Journeys program, because I'm sure when you get a new program, one of the first things that you do is kind of look at the pieces and look how it's put together and resources that it provides you to make it easy to teach with. And I know there's always a lot of questions about, well, why did they put this here? And what do you think the purpose of this is? So those are some of the questions that we're going to be able to answer through this exercise. So I want you to go ahead and take some time to read the article, Planning Effectively with Journeys. So read the article, summarize the main components, and Next, after you do that, the individual activity is to summarize the article on your own. Next, with a partner, review a lesson from Journeys. So you can pick, it was probably the most effective to partner up with somebody in your grade level and perhaps look at a lesson either that you've just done or one that's coming up, because I think that that will make the most sense and be the most relevant to you. As you go through that lesson, think about the key features and resources. How will you utilize these resources during your instruction? Will this take place during whole group instruction, small group, or as an independent practice and apply activity? And then we'll kind of get to see how each of these resources fit into the pieces of an effective plan. And then again, you'll be able to reflect how you are going to use each of those pieces in the lesson plan in one of the 3 settings. So we're going to go ahead and take about 20 minutes to do this activity, and then we're going to come back together. We'll share a few things, and I will go through a lesson myself, and we'll talk about what are those different pieces that are included in there. So I'm going to set a timer right here for 20 minutes. Okay. Start the timer, and that's there for everyone to see. And I'll let you know when we have about 5 more minutes to start wrapping up. Okay, great. Let's come back together as a group, and we're going to go through each of these characteristics one by one. This one is going to be a primary, since I'm working with my K through 3 teachers. We're going to look at a primary example, so using a lesson for primary. And I want you to chime in, because I'm not going to have all examples up here. So I want you to chime in and use your chart that you recorded of other pieces within a Journeys lesson that fall into this category. So the first one is articulate a learning outcome. Okay, we have our focus wall. I think that's a main piece in Journeys that summarizes what are you doing this week? What's everything that's happening? What's the plan? And the big question in the focus wall, the essential question that's front and center, it outlines the stories that you're going to be reading to get to that essential question. And then down below, it outlines all of the skills that are going to be taught within that lesson. So here you are really articulating the learning outcome of the entire lesson. So this is always nice to have posted in the room somewhere so the students can see this. It's also nice too, if you want something to send to parents, to let them know what are the skills you're going to be working on with the students this week. That this covers everything. So copying this and sending this home is always a great resource as well. That essential question, again, is right there included on that focus wall, but that reiterating that or posting that essential question definitely articulates the learning outcome. Prepare for complex text. So this is something that is for you as a teacher to use, to reflect and be able to use that information to articulate the learning outcome to students. So it goes through each of the text and, why are we using this text? What are the learning objectives? And so you can pull some ideas from that part in the lesson and use them to tell your students, we're going to identify the main idea and details about what a friend is. So that helps you pull those out, and you don't have to come up with those learning outcomes on your own. They're there for you in each lesson. Day 1 starts out, each day will start out with today's goals. So what are we going to be learning today in each section? Vocabulary and oral language, phonemic awareness, phonics and fluency, words to know, and text-based comprehension. So you have your goals for the day that are spelled out each day. And then throughout the lesson, you're also going to see areas where it gives you, again, those objectives you're going to be aiming for in that part of the lesson. Okay. Can you share anything that you discussed that I didn't just talk about here? What are some other pieces of the Journeys curriculum that articulates learning outcome? Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. The next planning or characteristic of an effective plan is activating prior knowledge. And we know that that's important for students to be able to connect their learning to what they have learned previously and to get their brain thinking along the same lines. It gets them geared up to, oh, I already know some of this, so I can connect my new knowledge to what I already know. And that's always helpful for students when learning. So you can always see pieces of activating prior knowledge are always going to start the unit because you want them to be able to make connections to the content. So there will be some activities. On here you see a map about neighborhoods. So what are some things about a neighborhood? And this is going to activate your students' knowledge, and they're going to be able to connect and engage in the content and the theme that they're getting ready to be exposed to within that lesson. The stream to start videos are great videos that provide content information. So this unit is about neighborhoods. So that stream to start video is likely going to activate that prior knowledge, something to do with neighborhoods, and it's going to be a video that allows you to bring in some digital resources from journeys. So here's a bigger look at the web about neighborhoods. The question is, what is a neighborhood? So students can use information from the stream to start video, which is going to be helpful, especially if students don't live in a neighborhood. They may not have that prior knowledge. So this kind of helps them understand what it's like to live in a neighborhood. But more than that, everybody lives in a different neighborhood. So understanding that too, what different parts of a neighborhood are. Again, this is part of starting the unit. The performance task preview talks a little bit about a neighborhood, the quote, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. It's a nice little song you can sing with your kindergarten students. I'm sure they would love that. So you can discuss that quote, what that means. The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. Raise your hand if you've heard that song. If you teach kindergarten, your hand should be in the air. Okay. There it is again, blown up for you. There is going to be a section on building background. That's something that's that's going to be helpful in activating prior knowledge. Okay, so here's just some ideas. What's something that you came up with as a group that I haven't already discussed up here? We can talk about that. Okay, I think it's been about 10 minutes. I'm not sure, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording today. So hopefully this is long enough for my stand and deliver to cover all of my journeys follow-up programs. Thank you.